I'm doing a diag on this Skoda Octavia with a 2-litre diesel engine, KCF. What I've done is a timing belt and water pump, and I've got a problem with it. The fans were cutting on. I have bled it and everything like that, like you normally would. The engine's stone cold now. I've let it cool down. And the problem I've got is, if I plug this in to here, I'll show you, onto that bit right there, coolant temperature sensor, a blue wire and a brown wire. Brown wire does have a ground, it's not got any voltage on the ground, and the blue is 5 volts if I disconnect it. I've just put this in to see what's going on, if I can use this. Because I've been going in circles here thinking the water pump is faulty. It's one that's switched. It's got the wire that goes in there, has a sleeve that comes over the impeller on the water pump and goes back out the way to help heat it up. If I put in here coolant, here we go, I've got 16 degrees there and 16 there. I think some of these, minus 40, we don't have a second one. The wiring diagram only shows one coolant temperature sensor, and it's the one with the blue wire and the brown wire. I got it set at 3.9 volts. If I lower the resistance to 2K instead of 3K, well, it's hardly changed anything up there, 3.2, but we're at 1920 on here. Let's take it down to 1K, 1000 ohms, 2.4 volts. Don't know what it was, 3 point something before. And we're going up 33. Like I say, if I unplug it, the wire is 5 volts. The other wire is a ground. I could test the ground and see if it's going to light a light bulb. There's no fan on, everything's happy. So it doesn't want that. I'll just turn that sound off. Right, so we've got a ground. When I've gone to 0, it's a short circuit, but I'm going to try 1.1 volts. Let's see what the voltage this is when it's around 90. So we're at 30. We've got to bring the voltage down a bit more. 200 ohms, 0.7, or 0.8, or 0.7. I would imagine that's where it likes to sit at. It's only showing 55 on here. Well, it's taken a while. You see that? It doesn't change instantly. It's gradually creeping up. That's not the engine getting warmer, because it's switched off. The voltage stays the same, because it's using this at 200 ohms. Creeping up. 86, 87, 88. That might be about right then for this. But if the engine's stone cold, if I plug it in, the sensor is, I'll check the resistance of the sensor actually, but it pulls it down to 0.5 instead of 0.7 or 0.8. And that goes to about 106 degrees or 116, something like that. And the fans come on. So, even though what I've done is timing belt and water pump, it's nothing to do with what I've done. It's just coincidental that this coolant sensor is faulty. And that's a way of checking it with a sensor simulator. We see the changes there. If I plug that straight into there, we are going to get the fans coming on, because it'll pull it down a bit more. Like I say, this is a cold engine. It's not even warm, you know. It was running earlier. Obviously, after doing the job, I wanted to check everything was okay. All the hoses are cold, the engine's cold. You know, that's the exhaust there, I can hold it. You know, the engine's proper cold. But when I plug it in, it thinks it's 116. I think that's enough right there to say it's not 116. All the pipes are stone cold. In fact, we could see what they are with this. If Plus, I've been on this way too long. It's one of those things, simple job turns into a nightmare. I'll tell you how it started. I've put on, well, this is saying it's 34 in places, but where that plugs in, right there, it's 35. Yeah, it was running a while ago, but it's not like 116, like the scan tool says. So we'll switch that off. It's not 116. That's just what the resistor says. So at 200 ohms, that must be about right. Let's see what that is in there. That might be a little lower, because the lower the resistance, the higher the temperature. You get a lower resistance in here, you get a lower voltage and a higher temperature. I'm going to join in some of these wires here out of this test kit. And got the wires going into multimeter, and this one's resistance, so we were saying we're okay if it's 200. This one's a little bit lower, 147 ohms, and like I said, that's a cold engine, so that's not right. I don't have the figures. I'll try and figure out what they should be for a cold engine, but that's obviously what's wrong with it. It thinks it's really, really hot when it's stone cold, so very strange. Yeah, it's happy at that, so I figured it out. That's enough proof. This has simple diagnostic, but because I was doing a timing belt and it's got that pulley, and I didn't check this first, I was just doing the water pump and timing belt. I've got tunnel vision to that. The water pump did need done. Yeah, now I've got a different fault, thinking what's wrong with it. It's not cooling, and it's not. It's a separate fault altogether. Happy with the wiring after using this. I know a new sensor will fix it, because that's what this is basically, a sensor simulator. It's trying before you buy it. So this way it's test, don't guess. We now know exactly what's wrong with it. And the temp gauge is saying it's hot when it's not, so we know a new temperature sensor right here. We're going to fix this. Like I said, that's stone cold. Right, it's proper cold. I wouldn't be keeping my hand on an engine if it was hot. One more thing, I didn't know how good the resistance on this would be. I knew it had a resistance feature, but it kind of agrees with what that was saying. So I just preferred to use that in case it was more reliable, but that seems to be okay. At this sort of resistance it is. I don't know what it's like at other settings, but that's fine. That is fine. At least we know what it is. I'm going to let it cool down even more and see if that changes. Back at the Skoda Octavia on another day, so I've got a new sensor. I've not fitted it yet. I've used the sensor simulator to get an idea that this is what it needed. Now I'm going to put the ignition on and see what voltage we have now. Before it was, what was it, 0.6, 0.5. Now we're up to 3.6. I could plug it back into that one and see the difference quick. That was 3.6 a minute ago. It started to drop. 2.4. So why is it doing that? Why is it dropping? That's interesting. It's dropping all the time. I've not started the car. It's obviously not running. And that coolant is dropping. Something's pulling it down. So I might go back into this one and leave it on for a while just to make sure it's not going to do the same thing. Back into the new one at 3.4. I'm just giving it a minute in case something was pulling this down. It does look like it's just the sensor. Starts off looking okay. So when you look at the live data, it looks good. by the time you start driving it, it looks like it's overheating, and it's not. It's just the sensor's resistance is changing because it doesn't do it with the new one. It's not even running, so an interesting one there. Hopefully it's helpful to somebody. Thanks for watching.